Next up, and this is where I think we might start to get yelled at.
Sure.
Number 17 is Scoot Henderson for us. Scoot Henderson was my number 2 overall prospect in 2023 NBA draft.
Same.
You guys will see that's not how I feel at this point. Whenever we go through and see where Brandon Miller is, because little quick spoiler for later on, Brandon Miller isn't coming tonight. Brandon Miller's coming in the future.
With all due respect, we're probably going to get yelled at for that one as well. I have a feeling
we probably will.
But I'm okay with it. Well, honestly, Sam, the next guy we're going to talk about, same draft class. So we both had this guy number 2, and based on our rankings, he's number 4.
That is correct. So
yeah,
Scoot averaged 14 points, 3 rebounds, 5.4 assists last year. The shooting splits were really just quite poor. Like really, really quite poor at the end of the day. 38.5, 32.5, 81.9 from the field. His true shooting percentage was 16% below league average. Averaged 3.4 turnovers per game. If you watch him, he just looked sped up. Like he looked like a teenager playing basketball. He looked like a teenager struggling with the speed of the game and trying to adjust. The thing that you and I talked about all season throughout the year, it is fucking impossible to play lead guard in the NBA as a teenager. That's just not something that in any way, shape, or form, anybody but the absolute fucking best in the league, Trae Young and Ja Morant, really are the only 2 guys that have come in at that age and been like unbelievable from the jump. And by the way, Ja Morant was like a year older than what Scoot Henderson is. Trae is really the only guy that has come in as a one and done point guard that is like an undersized-ish point guard and been successful. And I can give you an example of this. So here over on StatHead, right? A comparison to De'Aaron Fox and Darius Garland in their rookie seasons. Scoot Henderson averaged more points, rebounds, assists, right? Whatever. Shot a little bit worse from the field. Was in the middle of those 2 from the 3-point line, middle of those 2 from the free throw line. In terms of the advanced numbers, was basically right there with Darius Garland. Both had a negative 5.5 BPM. De'Aaron's defense was a little bit more valuable, so he ended up with a BPM just slightly higher. And he was just like slightly more efficient as a finisher around the basket. From like a VORP perspective, all of them quite poor, all of them quite negative. All of the advanced numbers, anything that you see will tell you it is exceptionally fucking hard to be a lead guard in the NBA at 19 years old. And that's what makes Trae Young as special as he is, right? Like I think we underappreciate how good Trae Young is. Now, Scoot is an entirely different player than Trae Young. Scoot is much more of a power player, much more of a physical player that changes speed super well, decelerates super well, but also has some real explosiveness and some pop, right? Has suddenness. I am in no way, shape, or form. Actually, I'm a little bit surprised. I shouldn't say I'm in no way, shape, or form. I was surprised Scoot struggled as much as he did last year. Also, I think that the level Scoot was at was much more in line with guys like Darius Garland and De'Aaron Fox whenever I and most others had a greater appreciation for him as a prospect than those guys entering the league. And in reality, he might just end up being more in their ballpark than in like the next upper echelon beyond them ballpark.
I mean, I think we split the middle here, and that's why I think I'm comfortable with where we have Scoot for a couple of reasons. One, we weren't like we didn't keep him number 2 in that class, which I think is probably fair. But also, I'm not willing to throw out my scout 1 year removed from the draft class. Not whenever he did some things. I mean, if you look over his last 25 games, 17 points, 6.5 assists, 3.5 rebounds, 41% from the field, 36% from three on 5 attempts, and 88% from the free throw line. Now he turned the ball over a lot. I get it. Like there are some things that aren't great, but it wasn't just like, oh my gosh, he doesn't know how to play basketball. Now we get another full season, Sam, and the numbers are very similar, and we did this next year. I think a 2-year sample size is a little bit more, right? We can start to
Yeah.
kind of make some other proclamations. My second part is you don't take a guy number 2 and not give him every chance in the world. So some of this to me is opportunity. When we start to get into this range, it's guys that have the chance to be the guy or have the ball in their hands all the time or whatever. Scoot is going to get that opportunity in Portland, in my opinion. I don't think Portland, or sorry, excuse me, number 3. Portland didn't take him number 3 to not give him those opportunities on ball and build this thing around him in some sense. So that's where those two things, I can't completely throw out my scout of him, and I can't ignore the fact that he's on a team and an organization that's going to really give him a chance.
So this is a really good question. What is Scoot's special skill? Garland had the ball handling and passing. De'Aaron Fox had the speed, right? To me, Scoot's ability to blend power with ball handling and like a certain level of speed still allowed him to get to his spots. Like the problem for Scoot last year was not getting to the spots on the court in the middle of the court. It was he really struggled to finish around the basket last year. It was he really struggled with his decision-making tree a lot of the time, right? I think that in general, that is the stuff that tends to improve as you get better and you get more experience and you get older and you get stronger and you get more physical. And the thing that we know about Scoot Henderson is he's an unbelievable worker. Like any of the intel says that this guy is an incredible, incredible worker. There's no worry about him like coming in and not doing the right things. We've seen it in terms of the improvement as a shooter already, right? I would say he is ahead of where he was entering the NBA as a shooter already. I think he made something like 36% of his threes out of ball screens this season, made something like 34% of his shots off the dribble in general from 3 this past season. I think Scoot is still going to be an all-star is where I'm at. I thought entering the NBA, Scoot was probably going to be like an all NBA player. I think I was probably wrong about that now. I think he has a chance to be that, to be sure. Very real chance. But like I thought Scoot was probably going to be like a multiple time all NBA player. I think he's probably more of like that all-star quality point guard now, in that De'Aaron Fox, Darius Garland, that kind of tier of guard, as opposed to what I thought coming in, which I think, we saw struggles with this year.
Yeah, so I broke mine into tiers when I did this, and I won't spoil it, but I had MVP, all NBA level guys, and then kind of like primary creators / high level secondary guys. And Scoot was in that tier, which is essentially like, hey, they may make an all-star, but they're not all NBA level players. So yeah, I'm in the same area, and I thought the same on my scout was Scoot, that he would be that. I wasn't one of those that thought he was in the same range as Wemby at all whatsoever. It was very much a battle of him versus Brandon Miller. I also have always thought Scoot, for all the explosiveness and all of that talk, I thought he played with great pace. Like I remember the first time I watched him play, I think as a 17-year-old with the Ignite, what stood out to me was the pace he played with and reading ball screens and all of that. And then I will say, I'm not going to sit here and say that Scoot Henderson is not a negative on defense right now. That would be crazy, right? But he has the physical tools and makeup to be at least neutral on that end of the floor with his strength and his length. He's not 6'1", 185. He's a 6'3", over 200 pounds. Not a ton of versatility with matchups, but I think there is a world where if he locks in, he can contribute to an overall defense. Like you don't have to hide him if he would lock in on that end of the floor.
I agree with that totally. Look, I see reason to have concern. I shouldn't say I see no reason to have concern. I definitely see reason to have concern with Scoot. I still think the ceiling, based on what we saw this year, is very high. Like the key to me for young guards is how do you get to your spots? What do you look like when you get to your spots? What does your decision making look like when you get to your spots? I felt like early on the decision making was like a calamity. Like he was all over the place and I had like no idea. But he was still getting into those areas in the middle of the court where he was quite dangerous, especially out of ball screens. The difference between him and like Garland, him and De'Aaron Fox, is that he is so much stronger than those guys in terms of like his physical frame. He can already keep guys on his hip, like in a pretty real way. It is, what do you do once you get into that area? For a long time, he had like, okay, I'm going to step back and get to that mid-range jumper, right? He made like 41% on those this year, pull up mid-range jumpers. I would like to see him get to more of a 2-foot jump stop floater more often than what we saw this year, right? Like this year, he took 67 runners and only made, he took 93 runners. So like basically 1 to 1.5 per game versus, 3 per game, basically, of pull up mid-range jumpers. I almost think that those things should be reversed, right? But that's part of growing and becoming more comfortable with the NBA game. I think that when you look at small guards, these are the things that they struggle with at the end of the day. These are the areas where things get difficult for them. I agree with you. Like it was funny to watch him defensively this year. He was so wildly like over aggressive. It felt like to me all the time. He was just like fouling everywhere. But I don't know. Like I liked the aggressiveness on some level too for a rookie that was in a situation where like it didn't matter if they were winning or losing because they weren't a contending team this year, right? I liked that he showed growth throughout the year. I think that's like an incredibly important thing.
Sure.
As you mentioned with the numbers, they showcase it. But if you just watched him play, like it really seemed like the game started to slow down the more that he played. He didn't overdrive as much. I felt like early in the year, overdriving was like a huge, huge issue for him as he was running through his ball screens. But then, like in the second half of the year, he would be patient. He would kind of string out a dribble or two. He'd get guys on his hip. He would throw like a little flip pass to the wing and hit a shot maker. Like I thought it got easier for him throughout the year. I think that will continue to happen as he continues to improve as a shooter, continues to improve his overall frame and continues to get stronger. Because here's the thing, guys that are 19, 20 years old, they don't stop growing. Like, even if you're strong, like some guys do max out a little bit earlier, right? But he's going to get stronger over the next 2 or 3 years and like get more physical as he continues to, get into an NBA style weight room that will work with his frame and everything. I have no real, I'm not worried about him being like a very high level lead guard. I think that like the all NBA stuff is like a worry. If he's,
Sure.
he might not be that is where I'm at. But in terms of what he can be, is it like an all-star guard? I still would project him being an all-star guard at this point.
Yeah. And again, I just want to like, he's going to get the opportunity. And that's what it comes down to is like, he's going to get a chance to do that. One other number that will be interesting to track this year for me is what he shoots at the rim. So on B-ball reference, 0 to 3 feet, 50%. He's got to get better there. Somebody that's as explosive and strong as he is, and the wingspan and all of that, he's got to finish better at the rim. I'm not crazy surprised. I've watched someone not near his level, but watching Jaden Ivey deal with these struggles, you watch guys improve. They learn to take the physicality or learn how to navigate big guys, or to what you said earlier, you learn not to shoot it. You learn that you can't finish over whatever big is there, and you pass to your open teammate in the corner. So now your field goal percentages naturally get better and your assists go up. And that's a decision-making process that it's a little bit understandable that maybe he doesn't see it yet because he spent a lot of his life being able to go in there and make those finishes.
Yep, totally. He's no longer the strongest dude in the yard anymore, like he
Correct.
was when he was younger.
Yep.
I still think he's skilled enough and creative enough as a playmaker to where he's going to be a great player. I'm not, he's still so young. think he might be the youngest guy on our list, if I remember correctly. I think he's maybe like a month or two younger than Victor, if I remember correctly.
Reed? Is he younger than Reed?
Yeah, I think he might be younger than Reed too, in all honesty. They're very close in terms of age, if I remember correctly. So look,
yeah, Scoot will turn 21 in February. Reed will turn 21 in June.
okay,
Scoot's
so
a little
Reed is slightly younger.